I just think the way Wicker Basket's handle curves is so beautiful, and the way her basket cloth flows in the wind is particularly lovely. I especially love the way her knees wobble when she's too nervous to give a speech in class. She has knees?
Well, I really like her big and the way that she...
Whoa, you can't be serious. You should go to a therapist. Ugh, what a brute.
Ken!
Sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you, Ken. Ken. Preston, why does everyone want to date Wicker Basket at this school? Well, I don't think Grabbi McGee wants to date Wicker Basket.
You know what I mean.
Goodness, feels like we're the only normal men in this school. This and more on Love Try High.
I've always loved to read comics, not just because I like the nice art, but because I really enjoy getting sucked into a unique world populated by characters that feel like real, breathing human beings. It's nice to get to know the characters and how they think and act and how they become the characters that they are and that I know and love. It's just too bad Webtoons does such a shit job of creating good and realistic characters and instead opt for their characters to fall into the most common and boring tropes possible. This is especially true of male characters, and after doing my video on female gender roles, I'm absolutely dying to talk about these common male gender roles and how terrible they are at portraying men as a whole. So without further ado, men!
I'm just kidding.
The Ken character exists for one reason and one reason alone: to serve the female character in any way possible and do nothing else. These men don't do anything aside from comforting, agreeing, or helping the female lead in any situation that arises, making them the perfect yes man to our boss babe leads. The reason I usually refer to these characters as a Ken is because they don't seem to move or do anything until the author is ready to play with them. They don't seem to have a life outside of the female lead. They are basically only written in to serve that female lead. One of the most egregious examples I can think of is with Frederick from the comic Serena. He mostly doesn't speak unless spoken to. He doesn't seem to have friends. He won't eat unless being told to do so. He's just a lobotomy patient wandering around the mansion waiting for Serena's beck and call. He's always just kind of standing around in the room, but he only really exists for when Serena wants to drag him around. It's like the author is a little kid playing with toys and can only make two dolls talk at once, so he only gets to play when he's needed. There's a very specific chapter in Serena where she walks into a dark and unlit room and he's just been sitting there alone. It actually caught me so off guard when I first read it. I was laughing at how ridiculous the setup of the scene was. Why was Frederick there? Why was he alone with no lights on? Is this normal behavior for him? I was left with so many questions about his character I knew wouldn't be answered since I was the only one putting more thought into his actions than the actual author. In my experience living with the opposite gender, they have never acted to serve me and my whims at my beck and call just because I'm pretty.
Maybe it's just because you're ugly.
Maybe my spouse more than others for sure, but that's because he signed a legal contract saying he would. Even then, his job isn't to treat me like an infant and do everything I ask. His job is to be a partner. In the case of a lot of these webtoons, it's less of a partnership and more like indentured servitude. Sure, some men like to be helpful, but they aren't a personal prop to be used at the whims of a pretty female lead. It should go without saying, but men are human beings, and human beings usually have lives, dreams, wants, wishes, that kind of thing. Regardless of if the men are side characters in a story, they are still people and do people things. Even if they aren't on screen all the time, you should have an idea of the sort of thing they get up to in their spare time. They shouldn't just be sitting alone in dark rooms waiting for the protagonist to come and step on them.
I love the kind of woman that will actually just kill me.
A really good example of a Ken character done well is Modius from suit or armor. He's literally just a knight in shining armor. Literally. There's nothing inside of his armor. He's just a prop. At least until he offers a rose to the only human who is unafraid of him and befriends Lucia. As the two grow close, the mindless suit of armor starts to make decisions on his own, seemingly becoming his own being, leading the audience to wonder how far he'll progress and what new emotions he'll unlock next. Modius is definitely a step up from other Kens I've seen in webtoons. Need I even mention any of the men from The Princess's Jewels? They all specifically only exist to serve the main lead. They might have personality when we first meet them, but boy howdy does that get thrown out the window fast, especially Duke Phantom, the first man to become a jewel. What do we know about him? He's a decorated war vet. Do we know anything else? No. Does he have any character motivations? No. Is the only reason for him being here to serve the main lead?
Yes.
That's a boring character. Be better, like Modius.
Come on out, you rapist!
I mentioned in a recent video of mine that webtoons often tend to, for some reason, always feel the need to shoehorn in a random rapist character into a story. It's astounding how many of these comics I've read where there's just a random man who wants to get with the female lead so blatantly and non-consensually. And believe me, I know scummy and terrible people like this definitely exist in the real world. And while I know it's a hard subject to talk about, I mainly want to refer to it in the context of Webtoon. These obligatory rapist characters have only been added to the story for menial drama, and not to make a commentary or tell a story. When there's otherwise no important point to having added these characters, I feel it tends to lose the weight that these actions once carried. Rather than it being a big deal these characters exist and their negative actions brought to light and spoken about, they're just another dime a dozen type of character. While the protagonist might move along from the attempted felony, not even giving it a second thought, I can't help but feel as if the entire situation that had been presented to us has been trivialized for the sake of pointless drama. And trust me, there are a ton of these types of random male rapist characters that are all fat and ugly and want to randomly get with the female lead. And what's worse is the fact that it's played off for shock value and literally nothing more. A recent example I can think of that does this is Marques Sergev from the comic I Thought My Time Was Up. While he's introduced to us in the first chapter, he's immediately shown to be a fat, ugly man who just wants the boss babe for her body.
Sex! One sex!
The scene is played off as just another Tuesday, with the boss babe Lariat barely giving him a second glance. In his only other appearance, he ambushes her in a theater and makes vague threats towards her. But this is also just a plot device for the male love interest to swoop in and save the day, rescuing the girl. Using assault for petty plot devices like this trivializes how harrowing this kind of experience actually is. Unfortunately, in more webtoons than one, I see these types of male characters used as a throwaway character just to make the rest of the characters look better by comparison. In The Princess's Jewels, Lord Meldia is introduced as just another raging rapist.
Hell no, man. What the fuck?
Who only has one thing on his mind. But seriously, these types are always portrayed to us as fat, ugly, rich men. And if they aren't, they're the hot, attractive male love interests. So how can you possibly hate them? Tammin Crassus from Who Stole the Empress is the perfect example of this type of character. He's hot, he wants to save the Empress by kissing her. There's a shitty explanation that he's giving her his life force to keep her alive, and she blatantly does not want this and tells him she would rather just die, based, than be alive with him. But the author of the story desperately tries to play off his actions as a good thing. This silly woman doesn't know what she wants. There seems to be a sliding scale with these rapists, starting with hot pretty boy male lead on one end, with audiences mostly accepting the felony behavior since they want their ships to sail, and fat ugly business pig man on the other, who is obviously bad and evil because they're unattractive. And in the middle we have rape man. Normally this is the part where I would recommend good for versions of this character, but I don't think YouTube would like that very much, so I will leave you with this. Unless you're writing a comic or story that deals with this situation in a realistic manner that doesn't trivialize the actions or use them as cheap plot, there's no reason to have it in the story in the first place. There's plenty of commentary to be made regarding this subject, but the fact that it gets trivialized for the younger audience Webtoon has acquired is downright disrespectful. Now, on a lighter note, the soft boy is usually a secret soft boy, where his only personality is the fact that on the outside, to everyone else, he might seem like a big scary man, but as soon as he meets the female lead, turns out he's just a big softie at heart. They can't possibly do a thing to hurt the female lead because the female lead made them feel love again.
I'm having feelings again. Like some kind of 14-year-old kid or something. I mean, you remember feelings, right?
Yeah, I have feelings every single day of my life.
Do you?
Are you saying you don't have feelings?
Well, I'm saying I built up a shell.
They had a hard outer shell, but soft inside. But only for the female lead. I have to admit, I actually tend to like the soft boy, mainly when they're put in a situation where they need to take care of a child. Like in Anne of Green Gables. I love Anne of Green Gables. Where a hard-shelled or shy person ends up taking care of a child in desperate need of familial love. Originally, I started out loving a webtoon called Cry, or better yet, Beg, for that very reason. But unfortunately, I can't recommend it as a good webtoon since the child meets the male love interest when she's 12 and he's 18. So basically the soft boy trope only works for me when the soft boy isn't the love interest in the story. Heijin from To You Who Swallowed a Star is an example of this type of character done poorly. From the moment the boss babe was inserted into the story, he's shown to have a soft spot, but only for the female lead. He'll get angry or upset if anyone touches him unless you're the female lead. There's not much else to his personality, wants, needs, but boy is he down bad for that female lead. His world revolves around her, which is gross since she started out as his babysitter. And in any other situation, this would be considered grooming. But not for the female lead. Another trait of the soft boy is relentlessly protecting the female lead at all costs. This means becoming big and scary when the female lead is in danger. Azrahan from the comic I Thought My Time Was Up does this to such a weird degree, where if any other male dares show any interest to the female lead, he'll straight up just try and murder them. This comes equipped with scary art and soft boy defending his territory like he's a wild animal and the female lead is just another scrap of meat to be had. This is usually done to show how soft boy's undying love knows no bounds, and also to make the readers wet themselves at how hot this is. There's usually no solid reason for the hard outer shell hiding the true nature of the soft boy, and if there is, you'll never get the full story. You'll be subject to a never-ending story, only piecing together the true nature of the soft boy through endless puzzle pieces because the author hasn't even made up their own mind on why the soft boy is the way he is.
Hello, what about me?
No, you're not in this episode.
Die hard, die hard, die hard! Alright, stick with me here. Hard boys are pretending to be soft on the outside, but in reality, they are actually very abrasive or distant from others on the inside. They're most commonly seen with a soft boy and used to show us how much better a soft boy is in comparison, or used to lazily show us just how different the pair really are. They're also used as a third and a love corner with the boss babe and soft boy. Hard boys aren't always seen as evil in a story, but they can be shown to be more abrasive than the soft boy. Hard boys are also commonly shown to us as aggressive boys, skipping the secretive outer shell and just being presented to the reader as aggressive. Because in Webtoon land, all men are either aggressive monsters or nice guys, and they couldn't possibly have more than one emotion in their personalities. Ariana's brother, Bavillo, I think his name is, from The Princess's Jewels, is needlessly aggressive with no motive or reasoning behind his actions, where he'll randomly show up just to bully and put down the female lead because that's just what the author wants in order to portray the woman as more elite or better than the man, since she has a better grasp of her emotions. It's just a really lazy way of writing when the author randomly inserts a male character like this just to show us how much better a female character character or a soft boy character is. I would say a good example of a needlessly aggressive or hard boy is Donggu Sion from the comic Bastard. He's a serial killer who has violent rages against women for seemingly no reason and ends up murdering them. While a normal person wouldn't understand why he does the things he does, you don't need to in order to understand the story being presented to you. He's not a one-off character we'll never see again. He doesn't exist to make his son look like more of a hero or soft boy. They exist in spite of each other. Donggu is a hard boy who creates the soft boy through his negative actions, and there are reasons for the characters acting the way they do. Like mentioned previously, they're used to counter a soft boy in a story to lazily show us how much better a soft boy is for a female lead than the hard boy is. Wurin from To You Who Swallowed a Star is the hard boy counterpart to Heijin, with Wurin introduced in the beginning of the comic as a nice guy who initially treats the female lead to presents and food and just general emotional support, but in the end, he's a hard boy. He's rude and possessive and disengaging to our boss babe. Isn't the child so much of a better match for our boss?
I am not gonna diddle your kids.
Another hard boy counterpart is Doha from I Thought My Time Was Up. He's pretending to be really nice to our boss babe, and while he might be getting feelings for her every once in a while, he still lies to her in order to gain information for his benefit from the boss babe. Wouldn't you rather the abusive boss babe stay with her soft boy partner Azrahan? A really well done example of a hard boy is Suchan Yang from Jungle Juice. He starts out the comic being very popular and having his life on track the way he's always wanted it to, making digs at the random sightings of bug people. All along, he's hiding the fact that he has dragonfly wings, and he's desperate to keep this a secret. He's shown to snap at the people who want to accept him for who he is and not who he displays himself as. While it's just a snippet of the story, I think it does a nice job of introducing us to our main character and getting to understand him as a person initially. I gotta be honest, I get really upset when male characters are so one-noted in stories. While I do see multiple examples of well-written men, I see more popular comics with badly written men used as a prop to lift up the female characters in the comic. Regardless of circumstance, background, or gender, people are still people with multiple emotions and thoughts and wants and needs. And while there are some outliers that may revolve their lives around a person or are needlessly aggressive, they're just that, outliers. If men and women are supposed to be seen as equals, then why does Webtoon constantly push comics where men are dumbed down, used as props, or one note just to show us how much we should love the women being presented in the story? In romance stories especially, we're shown that men are either slaves to women or egregiously domineering over the women, and audiences are meant to eat this up. Men don't just have one personality trait, men don't just want to use women for their bodies, men don't exist as just a side piece to a woman, and for them to be presented as such is a mistake.
What's happening?
What happened is you got caught!
This is outrageous! Let me go at once!
All right, gang. Let's find out who this creep really is.
Ken! But I turned down your 89th marriage proposal. You know I'm not interested.
But if I disguised myself as a hot boy, it would have been okay. The comments told me so.
Wait, what?
And I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling kids. Are we not real?